I remember the day of my father's funeral in sharp pieces. The gray sky over the small church outside Boston, America. The smell of lilies. My son, Caleb, tugging at my sleeve because his shoes hurt. My husband, Mark, checking his watch even as we lowered the coffin into the ground. When the last handful of dirt fell, I thought, this is the worst moment of my life. I didn't know something worse was waiting for me in my father's kitchen a few hours later. Dad's house sat at the end of a quiet street, white paint peeling from the porch railings, green shutters crooked over the windows. We always called it Dad's house, even after I moved with Mark and Caleb to a cramped apartment in New York City. Inside, it smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Neighbors and relatives filled the living room, holding paper plates and talking in soft voices. They told me he had a good life. They told me he was at peace. Someone pressed an envelope into my hand with a check for $200 for expenses, as if grief could be counted and paid in dollars. I thanked them and looked at my father's empty armchair, half expecting him to walk in and tell everyone to sit down and stop fussing. Mark kept drifting away from me. One moment he was at my side, the next he was near the door, then out on the porch, then gone. When I finally went to look for him, I found him in the kitchen with the door closed. He stood with his back to the window over the sink, hands flat on the table. A plate of store-bought cookies sat between us, untouched. My father would have called them sweet dust. For a second, I felt only that simple ache of missing him. Then I saw Mark's face. His eyes were steady, his jaw tight. He didn't look broken. He looked ready. "I need to talk to you, Emily," he said. His voice was careful, the one he used with landlords and managers. "Now, before anything else happens." I tried to make my answer light. "If this is about money, we can talk tomorrow," I said. We were always talking about money. The rent in New York, Caleb's school clothes, the way my father kept helping us. Or if it's about the house or the will. "It's not about the house," he said. "It's about us." The kitchen seemed to close in around me. The low murmur from the living room turned distant, like a radio in another room. "What about us?" I asked. He met my eyes, and I saw something strange there, almost like relief. "I have a second family," he said. For a moment the words didn't make sense. "A second family? That isn't funny," I said. My laugh came out thin. "Not today, Mark." "I'm not joking," he said. "She lives in Chicago. Her name is Claire. We've been together for 3 years. We have a daughter. She's almost 2. He listed the details one by one: city, name, years, child. I grabbed the back of a chair and held on. My father had been in the ground for only hours. Caleb was in the next room, eating pie and asking strangers if Grandpa could see him from heaven. And my husband was calmly telling me that I was not his only home. "I'm leaving, Emily," he said. "I've packed my things. I'll send money for Caleb. We'll work it out with lawyers. I'll be fair." The word fair made my chest burn. My father had spent 30 years working at a shipping company and saving every spare dollar so his daughters would never feel desperate. Fair was his word, not Mark's. From the living room, I heard my sister Hannah laugh, bright above the steady hum of voices. As the sound reached me, another thought cut through the shock. I began to wonder who else already knew my life had split in two, and why I was the last to hear it said out loud. 3 days after the funeral, I sat in a glass office high above Manhattan, wondering how my life had turned into a legal appointment. The city looked unreal through the wide window, all steel and movement. Yellow cabs crawled along the streets far below, like toy cars on a gray carpet. I held my black handbag on my lap, like it was a shield. Mark sat on my left, silent. My sister, Hannah, sat on my right, calm and straight-backed in a fitted navy blazer. The lawyer, Daniel Cooper, had kind eyes and a tired face. He shuffled papers on his desk, the sound sharp in the quiet room. A silver pen lay neatly beside a thick folder with my father's name on it. Seeing Dad's name typed in bold letters made my throat tighten again. I had cried so much in the last few days that my eyes felt bruised, but there were still tears hiding somewhere, waiting. "Thank you for coming in, Emily," Daniel said. "I know this has been a very difficult week." "That's one way to put it," I answered. my voice hoarse. I didn't look at Mark. I still heard his words from the kitchen. I have a second family. The world hadn't stopped when he said it. People kept eating pie and talking in the next room. But inside me, everything had broken. I'm here to go over your father's will, Daniel went on. He made some changes recently. We'll walk through them together. But before we begin, there is another matter we need to address. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. He glanced at Mark, then at Hannah, like we were all in on a secret. I was not. Hannah leaned forward smoothly. It's better to get it all out now, she said. Her voice was soft, almost kind. We'll handle everything at once. Before I could answer, she reached into her bag and pulled out a set of papers. She placed them gently on the desk and slid them toward me. The pages came to a stop in front of my hands. My own name stared back at me in neat black print. Emily Turner. What is this? I asked, even though I already knew. My body knew before my mind did. Divorce papers, Hannah said. And then she smiled. Not a big, cruel smile. A small, controlled one. Like she was pleased with a job done correctly. Mark and I have been talking with Daniel. We thought it would be less painful for you if everything was organized. I looked from the papers to her face. You and Mark, I repeated slowly. You and Mark have been talking. Hannah didn't look away. Yes. He told me what happened. He told me about the other woman. I told him that you and Caleb are my first family. I said I would protect you both. That's why we're doing it this way. You'll be provided for. Your first family, I said. The words tasted bitter. You say that while you hand me my own ending? Mark finally spoke. Emily, this is the cleanest way, he said. I'll take responsibility. You'll get support for Caleb. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to be fair. That word again. Fair. They said it like a blessing. To me, it sounded like a joke. I pushed the papers away with one finger, as if they were something dirty on the table. So, you all planned this together? I asked. You sat here and talked about my marriage, my child, my life, while I was choosing a coffin for our father? Hannah's jaw tightened for a second, but the smooth expression returned. Someone had to think ahead, she said. Dad would have wanted you safe. That's what I'm doing. You and Caleb will always come first with me. Daniel cleared his throat softly, as if he wanted to pull the room back from the edge. We can go through the divorce details later, he said. For now, let's focus on your father's will. He was very clear about his wishes. He asked me to read them in full, with both of his daughters present. I folded my hands in my lap, so my fingers wouldn't shake. Fine, I said. Let's hear what Dad had to say. Daniel opened the thick folder and lifted a stapled group of pages. The room seemed to shrink around his voice as he began to read the usual formal words, the ones about being of sound mind and making final wishes known. I watched Hannah out of the corner of my eye. While the lawyer spoke, she sat with that same faint smile, like she already knew how this would turn out and liked the ending. But she didn't know. None of us did. Because 2 minutes later, Daniel's calm voice was gone. The careful lawyer, the quiet room, the smooth control on Hannah's face. Everything cracked when he reached one line in the will. He stopped reading, stared at the page, and then, to my shock, he slammed his hand on the desk. I told him this would cause trouble, he shouted. For a moment after Daniel shouted, none of us moved. His hand still rested on the desk, fingers spread wide over my father's name. The city hummed beyond the glass wall, but inside that office, everything went silent. Mark stared at him. Hannah's polite smile slipped, like a mask knocked sideways. I felt my heart pounding in my throat. Daniel, Hannah said, her voice sharp now. What's wrong? He let out a long breath, then sat back, pressing his lips together. When he spoke again, his tone was calmer, but the calm sounded forced. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reacted like that. It's just your father knew this would be difficult. He turned to me. Emily, he left very specific instructions. What instructions? I asked. Please, just read it. He nodded and looked down at the will again. All right. I'll read this part exactly as he wrote it. He cleared his throat and began. To my daughters, Emily Turner and Hannah Reed, and to my grandson, Caleb Turner, I make the following gifts and instructions. I felt myself lean forward. Hannah did too, just a little. I leave my house in Massachusetts, my savings of approximately $220,000, and my controlling share in Turner Freight to my daughter Emily Turner and my grandson Caleb Turner, in equal trust. I blinked. What? I whispered. Hannah sat up straighter. What about me? She asked, even before he continued. Daniel kept reading. To my elder daughter, Hannah Reed, I leave a gift of $10,000 in appreciation for her help over the years, and in recognition that she has chosen a life and home elsewhere in America and Europe. Hannah laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It sounded like something brittle breaking. $10,000, she said. That's it. Mark looked from her to me and back again. Wait, he said slowly. So the house, the savings, the business, all of that goes to Emily and Caleb? According to this, yes, Daniel said. In trust. There are conditions, but that's the main structure. I shook my head, as if I could shake the words away. That doesn't make sense, I said. Dad loved us both. Why would he do that? Why would he cut Hannah out like that? Daniel's eyes met mine, and I saw something there that made my stomach twist. Because, he said quietly, he knew things you didn't. Hannah stiffened. Daniel, she warned, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted. He told me to. He wrote it down. He flipped to the next page and read again. I am aware of financial transfers made by my daughter Hannah from Turner Freight accounts without my consent, and of the plans she discussed to sell the house and divide the proceeds for her own purposes. I have documentation. I forgive my daughter, but I do not trust her with these assets. I ask my lawyer to explain this fully, if she contests my wishes. All the air seemed to leave my lungs at once. I turned to Hannah. You stole from him? I asked. My voice came out thin and high. Her cheeks flushed. I didn't steal, she snapped. I borrowed. The business wasn't paying me enough. I was the one handling the deals in New York and London. I moved some money for a short time. I would have put it back. How much? I asked. She hesitated, then looked away. It doesn't matter, she muttered. It does, I said. How much, Hannah? Around $80,000, Daniel said quietly. Your father found the transfers to your personal accounts. He also knew you asked him to sell the house, so you could finally buy a place of your own in Europe. Those were his words, not mine. I remembered a call from Hannah a year ago, her voice bright as she told me about flats in London and apartments in Paris, how she was so close to making a move. She'd laughed and said, if Dad would just stop clutching that old house, I'd be set. I thought she was joking. Now I saw the truth behind the joke. So, he punished me? Hannah asked, her voice trembling. He decided I didn't deserve anything, and he gave it all to Emily? Daniel shook his head. He didn't see it as punishment. He saw it as protection. For Caleb. For Emily. He told me, Hannah will land on her feet. She's clever. Emily stays. Emily raises my grandson here. This house should be theirs. Tears burned my eyes. I tried to picture my father sitting in this office, speaking those words in his rough, tired voice. I imagined him signing the will with his big, careful hand, knowing he was changing all our lives. What about Mark? Mark asked suddenly. Did he say anything about me? Daniel's mouth tightened. Yes, he said. There's a line here. He read, I leave nothing to my son-in-law, Mark Turner. He may build his own home elsewhere, as he has chosen to do. Mark's face went pale. He knew, he whispered, about Chicago, about Claire. He guessed, Daniel said. And then he found proof. He hired someone. He showed me the reports. He didn't want to shame you while he was alive. He only wanted to be sure that when he was gone, Emily and Caleb would be safe. Safe. That word again. It sat between us like a heavy stone. I looked down at my hands. 3 days earlier, I had buried my father. In the kitchen afterward, my husband had told me he had another family. Now I sat in a glass office in America while my sister's face crumpled, and the lawyer told us that my father had known all along. He had known about the lies, the money, the secrets, and still he'd loved us. Still, he'd chosen me. In the weeks after the will was read, I felt like I was walking through a house that had been picked up and set down in a different place. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. My father was gone. My marriage was over. My sister avoided my calls for days. Yet somehow, I was now the owner of a house, a business, and enough money to do more than just survive. Daniel helped me move through the legal storm. There were signatures and forms and quiet meetings in that glass office above the streets of New York. Mark and I signed the divorce agreement at a long wooden table. He wore the same careful expression he'd worn when he told me about Claire, like he was doing something practical and necessary, not breaking the last pieces of my old life. "I'll send $1,200 a month for Caleb," he said, the number calm and flat between us. "And I'll pay half of his school costs." We agreed on that. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded distant. "We agreed." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry, Emily." I didn't say, "You're sorry now that the will left you nothing." I didn't say, "You're sorry you got caught." I just nodded. "We'll be okay," I said instead. "You build your life. We'll build ours." Leaving New York felt less like leaving a city and more like stepping out of a costume I had never grown into. The apartment we'd shared suddenly seemed too small and too full of ghosts. I packed our lives into boxes. Caleb's school drawings, my work folders, a chipped mug my father had given me with the words "World's Best Kid" faded on the side. On our last night there, I stood at the window and watched the lights of the city blinking like stubborn stars. New York had given me work and noise and distraction. It had not given me a home. The home was waiting in Massachusetts. The first time I unlocked the front door of my father's house as its new owner, my hand shook. Caleb ran ahead of me, his sneakers squeaking on the old wood floor. "Is this really ours now, Mom?" he asked, turning in a circle in the living room. "Like, forever?" "As long as we want it to be," I said. Saying the words out loud felt strange and strong, like trying on a coat that actually fit. We started small. I painted the living room a soft gray and left one wall white where the light hid in the afternoon. I kept my father's armchair, but added a new blue pillow, one that didn't sag. We fixed the porch swing and bought a second-hand table for the kitchen. There was enough money now, real, solid money in the bank, that I didn't have to count every dollar before I spent it. I still counted anyway, out of habit, but it no longer felt like drowning. Taking over Turner Freight was the part that scared me most. I had always thought of my father's job as a world of trucks and shipping routes and endless spreadsheets. I knew enough to ask questions, not enough to give orders. But he had trusted me with it, and I couldn't ignore that. Daniel introduced me to Rosa, the office manager who had worked beside my father for 20 years. She had sharp eyes and a warm laugh. "Your dad used to say you were the brave one," she told me one afternoon as we sat in the small office in Philadelphia. "You just didn't know it yet." "He said that?" I asked. "All the time," she said. "Usually after talking about Caleb for 20 minutes. With her help, and with a younger accountant who actually liked numbers, we started updating things. We moved the records onto better software, cut some waste, found a few new clients along the East Coast. At the end of the first year, the company had made about $50,000 more than the year before. I sat alone in the office after I saw the final numbers and cried, not from sadness this time, but from a fierce, quiet pride. It took longer for things to shift with Hannah. For a while, there was nothing but silence between us. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. It was short. "I'm in Chicago for work. I saw Mark with his daughter. You were right to let it go. I'm sorry. For everything. H." I stared at the screen for a long time. I thought about the money she had moved, the lies she had told, the way she had smiled while giving me divorce papers. I also thought about the girl who had shared a room with me when we were little, the one who used to whisper stories about visiting Europe and living in bright, tiny flats above bookstores. I wrote back, "I'm not ready to forgive you yet, but I hope you build a good life. For real, this time." Her reply came a minute later. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. On a warm evening near the end of that first year, Caleb and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sun sink behind the trees. Fireflies blinked in the yard, small floating lights. "Mom," he asked, "do you think Grandpa can see us?" "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I hope he can." "I think he can," Caleb said. He leaned against me, his head on my shoulder. "If he can, he's probably happy, right? Because we're in his house and we're okay." I looked at the white railings, at the patched porch boards, at the yard that needed mowing. I thought about the will, the secrets, the shouting, the broken promises. And then I thought about this moment, simple and quiet, with my son's weight warm against my side. "Yes," I said softly. "If he can see us, I think he's happy. We're finally where we're supposed to be."